Respected chairpersons, other dignitaries on dais, in the audience, life itself is an archive. And so, I feel it very much privileged to share some of the glimpses from my own gallery. This is a case from pre-city era, sometimes in late 1990s, where a 65-year-old pen presented the subapical right obesity with erosion of the ribs, severe pain, generalized, more prominent, more intense pain radiating to the right arm, and he was diagnosed provisionally as bronchogenic carcinoma, suspected pan-post tumor at SSKM Hospital, Kolkata. In fact, he was advised bronchoscopy and the patient came to me in a Coal India hospital for some routine investigations of blood and urine prior to his bronchoscopy. We did his routine investigations including urine, which showed some peculiar phenomenon that there was proteinuria, but the turbidity disappeared on further boiling and reappeared on cooling. We suspected Bence-Jones proteinuria, and yes, Bence-Jones protein was positive. In retrospect, we analyzed the peripheral blood film, which showed excessive rouleau formation. We did a lateral X-ray of skull, which showed multiple punched out lytic lesions, and a bone marrow was done by me, which revealed an extensive population of normal and abnormal plasma cells, and subsequently serum protein electrophoresis revealed ailment. The entire purpose of presenting this case is to highlight the importance of routine investigations. A simple test like urine backed up by clinical insight changed the complete complexion of the diagnosis. Initially, which was thought to be bronchogenic carcinoma, turned out to be multiple myeloma. And bronchoscopic biopsy at Kolkata at that time, it revealed it was not bronchogenic carcinoma, it was myeloma deposit. The second case is a young adult, 17 years, having multiple joint pains off and on, consulted different clinicians and diagnosed variously from rheumatic fever, reactive arthritis, JRA, that is juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, and even growing pain. But the clinical review did not reveal any acute phase reactor or any bony deformities. Rather, he was having pallor and mild icterus without hepatosplenomegaly. Now, peripheral film showed various red cell abnormalities with hypochromic microcytic blood picture, and there were some boat-shaped cells and sickle-like cells. The sickling test was positive, and on electrophoresis, hemoglobin S was present. So it was a case of vaso-occlusive phenomenon in a sickle cell disease. The purpose of presenting this case is to highlight that all clinicians, irrespective of the discipline, should be encouraged, particularly the youngsters, to have a generalized approach to the patient rather than the segmental or regional approach. The third case is a female, 35 years, having refractory anemia and mild jaundice, who was treated for jaundice and was treated with iron therapy. Peripheral blood film in retrospect revealed macrocytes, macrovalocytes, hypersegmented neutrophils with low vitamin B12, low serum folate, and a bone marrow showed marrow-megaloblastosis suggestive of megaloblastic anemia. The purpose of presenting this case is to highlight that unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia is one of the commonest manifestations of megaloblastic anemia, which may be confused with other causes of, say, Gilbert syndrome and hemolytic anemia and hemoglobinopathies. So this should be considered as an important differential diagnosis. The fourth case, female, 26 years, having severe anemia, mild The patient came to me with a normal iron profile and normal HbA1c. What next? To review the anemia, we saw the peripheral blood film and complete hemogram. There were some small dark round RBCs with lost central blood. Probably these were microspherocytes. At the same time, we detected multiple irregular rotating RBCs. So could it be multiple myeloma? But serum protein electrophoresis was normal. Direct Coombs test turned out to be positive, suggestive of autoimmune hemolytic anemia.
ये खुला हुआ है सर
Hemolytic feature was emphasized by high reticulocyte count and low serum hemoglobin. Again, to rule out associated drug-induced causes, we ruled out the drug history, explored the drug history. There was no offending drug which the patient took earlier. And since autoimmune hemolytic anemia can coexist or precipitated by lymphomas and collagen vascular diseases, these two workup were done. These were all negative. The purpose of presenting this case is to highlight that unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia may be present in all hemolytic anemias, and investigation of hypochromic microcytic anemia does not end where iron profile and HbA1c ends. So there are many other causes of hemolytic anemia that should be considered as pertinent clinical differential diagnosis. The next case, male 55, pyrexia of unknown origin, no hepatosplenomegaly and pancytopenia. LDL test was negative. Bone marrow was advised. Bone marrow showed multiple antibodies, both intracellular and extracellular. The whole purpose of presenting this case is to highlight that a negative aldehyde test and negative splenomegaly does not rule out possibility of visceral stenosis. In collagen, these two features, aldehyde test and splenomegaly, it takes time, at least 3 months to develop. So a negative spleen enlargement and a negative aldehyde test does not exclude visceral stenosis. This case is just reverse. 55-year-old male presented with irregular fever, no organomegaly, severe color, pancytopenia. Aldehyde test, immediately it was done. As I do in all bone marrow cases, it turned out to be immediate profit. Bone marrow was advised with specific indication for antibodies, but peripheral showed excessive proliferation and marrow was packed with plasma cells, both normal and abnormal. Serum protein electrophoresis detected in that. The purpose of presenting this case is to highlight that a positive aldehyde test is not synonymous with myeloma. Any condition causing hyperbilirubinemia, like myeloma, nephrotic syndrome, or cirrhosis of liver, or any chronic infection can give rise to positive aldehyde test. So what are the take-home messages? First one, avoid Procrustean error, Procrustean crime, as Papon has put it. In clinical medicine, Procrustean crime means to diagnose a case rapidly, hurriedly, with a prefixed diagnosis, without going into the clinical detail or properly examining the patient and fitting in clinical signs and symptoms in diagnosis. So this is work by Papon not to follow, not to avoid this thing. So one should be very cautious. The second one, never say never again. Clinical medicine is immortal. So even with latest cutting edge technologies and advancement of clinical laboratory investigations, maybe imaging or molecular pathology or molecular biology, clinical acumen, clinical diagnosis and clinical history remains the mainstay and cornerstone in all diagnosis. Laboratory investigations are meant to supplement the diagnosis, clinical diagnosis, and not to substitute it. And as Arthur Haley has put it, all research in medicine is like building a wall, brick by brick. And what a pathologist can do a pathologist can do is to make some modest contribution within his own reach, within his own time. But at least he should do that. Lastly, I repeat, life is an archive. We all have our own archive. So at the end of the day, you just browse through your file, your archive, and recapitulate your failures and your achievements. Thank you for patience.
Thank you, sir, for the extremely palatable presentation. Sir, I have a confusion.